Good morning guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I made it's a small one, but it's a iced cubano. So you pull the shot, brown sugar, and mix it up, then shake it, put a little bit of milk in there. Absolutely divine. Now today I want to talk about the 3 best lures that I have found in my 10 years of fishing. I want to say I've been fishing since I was like 8, at least that's when I could remember. But I want to talk to you guys about the 3 best lures for snook, tarpon, bass. They're going to be all kind of intertwined, but I'll kind of work through the best lures for each individual fish. Now, starting off, preface, I live in South Florida. I live in the Naples-ish area, and I fish a lot of freshwater ponds, saltwater ponds, little bit of that Gulf of Mexico, but I've started to hone in on the freshwater snook and tarpon. So that's kind of where I'm coming at with this video. I've been fishing my entire life. I can remember fishing from 8, but we used to have a boat. We used to go out offshore, group of fishing, cobia, all of that kind of good stuff. I started fishing for snook when I was about 8. That's kind of why I said 10 years, so that's where we're gonna leave that mark. Now, we have had a lot of new baits and lures come in through the years for snook and tarpon, and a couple of them I'm going to talk about in terms of the newness of them and why they're really good. And then one of them is just an old faithful that I've always been fishing. I've started fishing and I'm going to keep fishing it to the day I die, or they discontinue it. So without further ado, let's start going into it. Now, my number 1 lure, probably to no surprise by you guys, for snook and tarpon is a white paddle tail. More specifically, it's going to be a 3-inch white NLBN. Now, is this stereotypical of Florida? Is this the lure that screams I'm a kid who likes to fish and I watch Laz on YouTube? Absolutely. But is this lure by no doubt an amazing thing? Absolutely. I have caught more snook, more tarpon, more bass on this lure than like anything I've ever fished. There's gonna be a YouTube short like up in one of the corners, but I fished this lure. I got 20 bass on it. I filmed a YouTube video short about it, but I caught 20 bass on this in the cold weather and they smoke it. Somehow with the paddle tails, with the ribs on this lure, they basically perfectly honed in on the harmonics of a wounded baitfish. Now, wounded baitfish, as they're swimming through the water, they're shimmering around and they're more erratic than a normal fish, and that's what those snook and tarpon are going to hone in on. Now, the way this paddle tail is kind of designed, I don't know how, I don't know what they did to it, but they kind of designed it to where the harmonics of this paddle tail as it's swimming through the water basically perfectly mimics a wounded baitfish. They're overpriced. They're way overpriced. It's like $8 or $9 for 5 of these. Okay, yeah, they're amazing lures, but $8 or $9? Really? Bring the price down and I'll literally fill up a whole tackle box. I'm not saying my tackle box isn't already filled up with them, but bring the price down, please. And I feel like they'd be better and more mass produced to the more people, because I know a lot of people who don't buy them because they're $9. I bought these for the sake of the video, but they're NLBN jig heads right there. These things are expensive also. They're like $10 for 3 of them, 2 of them, and they're not that good. I mean, they're twist on, they obviously fit really well. They come in a quarter, 1/8 ounce, ½ ounce, but are they really that good? They're good, but I can get some Z-Man stuff, or BKK stuff, just not NLBN logoed, for much cheaper, much better hooks. So yeah, NLBN white, one of my favorite lures of all time, and this is going to be mainly on my new rod, which a video will be coming out very shortly. This is the Daiwa Fuego 4000 spooled with 30-pound Suffix 832, and then a Star Rods Stellar Light 7'6" medium action. This rod, I love it. It has a really long butt from the reel seat down to the butt of the rod. So this back section is amazing for just whipping lures out there like the paddle tail, and I'm getting a nice hook set when they are deeper out there, because we do have 7'6". So that is an amazing rod and reel setup for that kind of thing. So next thing we're going to work into is something that's a little bit new, I don't know if a lot of people are fishing them. I know I've seen some people on YouTube fishing them, but I don't go out there and see people fishing them that often, especially on the beach, which they work really, really well on the beach. So that lure that I'm going to be talking about is a swim bait or glide bait, whatever you want to say. But a glide bait on a bait caster. Now, by no means am I a bait caster enthusiast. This is a cheap, dyeable bait caster. I don't even know the name of it. I think I picked it up for like $100, $200. But this is a 6 cents glide bait. I don't remember the exact name of it, but it is slow sinking and it's just beautiful. Nice jointed body, nice tail feather on the back. And I think any sort of glide bait, any good glide bait, let me preface that, not any sort of glide bait, any good glide bait, any slow sinking, I think slow sinking works the best. Any slow sinking glide bait in the 3 to 7 inch range, I think is going to be perfect for those snook and tarpon. Where I fish in these lakes and ponds, these things get crushed. I mean, just demolished by big snook and big tarpon all the time. I really wish I had some GoPros, but yesterday I was fishing during the rain and I left my GoPro at home and I must have caught 5 or 6 snook and tarpon on this. I caught 2 tarpon and then I think 3 or 4 snook on this, and I did catch a 29 3/4 on this, and then also there were a bunch of 28 inches and one that I did lose. That I know it's always the big fish we lose, stereotypical, but I do want to say he was in that upper slot area. I could be wrong, but when his head came out of the water, he did look big, but he just spit the lure. But basically what I'm saying is get out there, throw a glide bait. Now, with glide baits, they're not going to be a searching bait. So if you're in a new area and you're like, oh, I just want to fish, I want to find fish, don't throw a glide bait. Throw a 3-inch NLBN, throw a paddle tail, throw something that you know any fish from this big to this big is going to hit it. These baits are going to be for those places that you know have big fish. You know there's some good sized fish in there and you want them to eat a big lure. I'm not saying this is a big lure. It's about 4-inch swim bait, but these are going to entice those bigger bites and they're going to stay away from the smaller fish, which in some cases is really good, some cases not good. So it's up to you guys, but I will say glide baits work amazing for big bass, snook, and tarpon. At least down here in South Florida, especially with the colder weather, it is amazing. Now, the setup that I'm rocking is like a medium heavy bait casting setup. So I just have a Daiwa bait caster on a medium heavy rod, 7 foot, and then 30-pound Suffix A32 on 25-pound fluorocarbon leader. Oh, and I forgot to say, on that 30-pound braid is 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. I do like to fish lighter setups for snook and tarpon. 1, because they're smart, and 2, I just don't like making 5,000 casts with a heavy rod. Moving on to the final lure. This is one of the lures that I've been throwing my entire life. I think I've kind of perfected it, if I must say so. I'm not going to say perfected it, because you can never perfect something in fishing, but I have learned the lure really well, and I've learned how to fish it. There's a lot of different ways to fish it, and I'm going to give you the 3 main ones for different weather, different situations. But the lure that I'm talking about is a DOA. The DOA Terrorizer. This lure right here, this little guy, it's so simple. It's just always been around. I feel like everyone has thrown one of these in their lifetime, but these things are just amazing. It's a 3-inch lure. They do make the mini Terrorizer now, which is like 1.5 inches. It's really tiny, and it works amazing for like peacocks and micro poons and micro tarpon, but this 3-inch is just spot on. Something about it, the way it dives, the way it darts, just drives the snook and tarpon crazy. Even bass. I've caught a lot of bass on this. The DOA Terrorizer is one of those lures that I will throw as long as I live and as long as they live. I know these things have been around for a long time, longer than I've been alive, and they're just something that I've grown up throwing. There's 3 ways to fish it. Now, the first main way is kind of obvious. Just kind of reel it back. Fish it like a paddle tail. Reeling it back, the tail darts around. It doesn't have that much action, but it's kind of just a very finesse lure if you want it to be. and it can just be nice and simple. Reel it back. I've got plenty of Snook and Tarpon doing that. Got plenty of bass doing that. When it's cold outside, when the fish are being a little bit lethargic, let it sink for a second or two. By the way, this lure sinks a foot every second, give or take. It's like a little bit more than a second, like 1.3 seconds. I timed it, but give it a couple seconds. So imagine every second that it's in the water, a foot it's dropping. So I like to fish it around that 3-4 foot range. So let it sink 3-4 seconds. Slowly reel it back, and this will get smoked if the fish are being lethargic. Give it a twitch or two. Give it just a hold your rod and just twitch it as you reel it back, and that'll kind of make it dart, and the fish will smoke it. Now, as we get into a little bit warmer weather, maybe spring, maybe early fall, the fish are going to be a little bit warmer, the sun might be out, and you might be wanting them to be a little bit more aggressive. So, fish it kind of subsurface, and still do that nice slow reel, but as you're reeling it in, I'll kind of give you a visual, make sure I don't hook myself here. So, as you're reeling it in, imagine I just cast it out. As you're reeling it in, slowly reel it, and then just twitch your rod, just like this, kind of push it down, and then jump it back at you. So you're reeling, push it, and reel it back. Push it, and I think that is what my main ticket for catching these fish on a DOA is. I think that works the best. You get a lot more erratic action. You can pause it, let it sink for a second, and then twitch it back up and continue. But I think that erratic action, that unpredictableness of the DOA is what drives the fish crazy. It's kind of like a spook or the NLBN mini mullet. They're kind of erratic. The spook is predictable, but in a sense it's erratic. And same with the mini mullet. You cannot walk the dog with a mini mullet. It's erratic. It's just crazy. It's all over the place. And I think that's what Snook and Tarpon love. I think they love seeing that fish just go all over the place, and they're tracking it, and then it just one little thing that draws it in, and it'll smoke it. So I firmly believe that Snook and Tarpon do follow lures for a very long time. That's why I like to fish my 7.6 light leader, light line rods, so I can whip them out there and I can get a fish to commit to it. I do think that Snook and Tarpon follow lures for a very long time. They're just smart fish, and they're hard to fool. But when you do get them to bite, it's amazing. So that's why I think that you will feel a fish hit it. They'll hit it with their nose and try to wound it. And when that does happen, just let it sink. Let it drop down for like a second or two. Make it act like the lure is completely wounded, and then fish it back a little bit more erratically. That's just a little tip that I've learned that works. If a snook will hit it, they'll try to wound it and make it like not swim well. So fish it back slower, fish it back more erratically, and that's just a little tip, my 5 cents, or my 2 cents, sorry. The final way of fishing it is, I think, what everybody does, or what everybody was taught to do. Jig it, cast it out, let it sink, jig it, jig it, jig it, reel in the slack, jig, jig. What I've learned to do is just 1, 2, 3, really short ones, let it sink, 1, 2, big ones, let it sink, 1, 2, 3 short ones, let it sink. And as you're letting it sink, you're reeling in the slack. That way, if you don't reel in the slack, so imagine this is a lure right here. So it drops, boom, 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 1, 2, 3. If you don't reel in the slack, it'll just drop straight down. That's because all of this extra leader line is just sitting here, and it'll drop. Now, imagine this. You jig, 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 and you reel in your leader, it's gonna fall like that. Let me do a little bit better demonstration where it actually touch the table. But it'll be here, jig, 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 and it'll swing, and it'll come forward instead of, if there's too much leader line, it'll just drop straight down. That wasn't the greatest thing, but that's kind of the premise, where you want to reel in some of your slack so it slowly comes down instead of just dropping straight down. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the DOA Terrorizer. If I were to throw one lure for the rest of my life, it would be the DOA Terrorizer. But I've come to love swim baits, glide baits, and the NLBN. So if you guys have any other lures that you want me to talk about, let me know. And if you guys have anything that you want me to try in a video, let me know. But the setup that this is on a 3000 Shimano Stratic 20-pound Suffix 832 on a St. Croix Triumph medium heavy, not medium heavy, just a medium rod. This setup is really light, really amazing. I can cast it for miles, and I can cast it a lot. So those are my 3 setups. Those are the 3 lures that I think are the best that you can have in South Florida and even up north in different areas for snook and tarpon. If you guys disagree with that, let me know in the comments below. Tell me what you want to see, and I'm going to be trying to film a video with all 3 of those lures, trying to catch a fish on every single one of those that I talked about. I hope you guys have a beautiful day. As always, peace, God bless y'all, and get out there and fish.